Sometimes when I'm bored, I ask random questions, and one of those questions is, if you could live anywhere, where would you live? Now I have 3 criteria for places I would live. First of all, they have to speak English, cause I speak English. Second of all, they have to have a Costco, cause I cannot live without a Costco. And third of all, it has to be in the United States, cause the only other places with that criteria are like places like Britain. And I'm not living in Britain. Also, I'm a United States citizen, so it would be ideal if I live in the United States. I can't imagine myself living in somewhere else outside of the US. Because of those 3 criteria, personally, if I could live anywhere, I'll probably live somewhere on the West Coast. You know, someplace like in Oregon or, I don't know, Anchorage, Alaska. I mean, all those places have Costco's, right? Also, I'd rather live in these places because they're pretty cold, and I'd rather live in the freezing cold than the hot. With the cold, first of all, the cold feels so much more refreshing than the hot. The hot just feels like you're miserable. If it's way too cold, you could just put on layers and you'll be fine. But there's so much clothes you could take off when it's hot. Remember at the beginning of the video I was saying how I asked this question when I'm bored? Well, you should remember it because that was only like a minute ago. Because I asked this question, I've heard a lot of responses. And I want to talk about those responses because some of the responses I've heard were so dumb. One of the responses I heard is a girl telling me that she wanted to live in Britain. Britain. Why would you want to live in an uncivilized country like Britain? Aside from that response though, actually some of them were very valid. I mean, I've heard some places like Canada, which, I mean, I guess it's fine. It's basically just the US but maple syrup. And yeah, also the responses I've ever heard were pretty fine. Well, except for one. I've heard this response many times, and it makes me so angry every time I hear it. It is what the cool kids call a pet peeve. I cannot stand it when people say the words,
I want to live in Japan.
The first thing I think when people say this is why? Why would you want to do that to yourself? So I asked them that. Why? And I usually get 2 responses. The first one being, I don't know. What do you mean I don't know? You're telling me if you got $10 million and you could live anywhere, you would live in a country you don't even have reason to live in. And the second response I hear, which angers me even more, is the words, well, Japan's so futuristic. First of all, no, it is impossible to live in a future unless they made a time machine, but even then, if they were in the future, that would be the present for them. So no, they can't live in the future. Second of all, I don't know where this misconception came from. Honestly, I'm too tired to talk about it, so there's a video from Chris Broad about it if you want to watch that. Japan is not a futuristic place. Does this look so futuristic to you? Oh, but look, they got robots working at restaurants. We got that here too. And don't get me wrong, I don't hate the country, but it's good for visiting, not for living. There will only be a very small chance of me living in Japan, and that's because my dad lives there. In my adult life, I would never live in such a miserable country. I mean, but how can you blame them, I guess? Because at the end of the day, these people probably haven't lived anywhere aside from where they currently live, so they probably feel like an urge of getting out to a completely new place. I mean, I've been fortunate to live in 5 different cities, including Japan, so I don't feel this urge. So, what have we learned today, kids? We have learned, if you want to live in Japan, your opinion is trash. Anyways, see you guys next week.